Marinaro, the Sick Podcast, following the Montreal Canadiens' huge 3-2 win in overtime versus the Vegas Golden Knights. And the Canadiens hold a 2-1 series lead over Vegas. Joining me on the Sick Podcast from the Montreal Gazette newspaper, sports columnist Stu Cowan. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing well, Tony. How are you? Just like we all predicted, right?
Oh, man. What I saw last night at the Bell Center, absolutely. Stu, I don't know about you, a game that Vegas had completely dominated up until the overtime where the Canadiens really showed up. But I'm watching that game, and as terrible as the Canadiens were, they're in it. And I looked over at my family and I said, I'm telling you, if they win this game, I think they're going to end up winning the Stanley Cup.
It was just remarkable. And I got a text from a buddy of mine today who's always all over Carey Price, dumping on Carey Price. He sent me a text. He says, next time I'm dumping on Carey Price in the future, please tell me to shut up. That's why Marc Bergevin gave him the contract he did. As I've said, there's regular season Carey Price and there's playoff Carey Price. And this is playoff Price as good as we've ever seen him. Kept them in the game. They had no business being in that game. I mean, it should have been over after the first period. They were outshot 17-3 in the first period. Some really good scoring chances. Outshot again in the second period. Totally outplayed. But Carey Price kept his team in there long enough for them to come back. And then, that tying goal with Marc-Andre Fleury, it's like, maybe the Forum Ghosts did finally find their way to the Bell Center. It's hard to explain how else that play happens. I don't know what Marc-Andre Fleury was doing behind the net, but if anybody else has a better explanation than that, maybe it was the Forum Ghosts came back and gave him a little nudge on his stick or something. But what a memorable game. And boy, it's going to be interesting to see how this affects both teams, how much the Canadiens can ride off of this and how much this might play in Marc-Andre Fleury's head going forward.
Yeah, the Sick Podcast is brought to you by Essentia, the world's only natural memory foam mattress. Go to myessentia.com/sickpod and see why Essentia is the mattress of choice for many athletes, including over 25% of professional hockey players. Use code SICKPOD for a free pillow with your purchase. Essentia, beyond organic sleep. At one point, it looked like the Vegas Golden Knights were really putting the Canadiens to sleep, Stu. The shots on goal were 12-0. The shots on goal after the first were 17-3. The shots on goal after the second were 30-8. And that's why I said what I said, that if the Canadiens win that game, when I saw the way they were getting outshot, then anything can happen. And it was scoreless after the first, and it was tied at 1 after the second. And I'm watching this, and I'm like, is Vegas this good? Are the Canadiens really this bad? Or did the fact that Dominic Ducharme was not behind the bench affect the Montreal Canadiens that much? What's your take?
Well, I think the Golden Knights might have put Marc-Andre Fleury to sleep too. Maybe that explains what happened with that last goal. He said he only had 8 shots after 2 periods. I think the coaching thing probably did have an impact. I think emotionally, a lot of guys must have been wondering, like, man, do I maybe have COVID also? There was a coaches meeting in the morning with Ducharme was part of and Brassard. So I think there was a lot of things going through these guys' heads saying, Ducharme had both vaccines also. Like, can I maybe get this? What's going to happen? And then just behind the bench, I don't want to say there's confusion, but probably just an adjustment of Luke Richardson running the lines. He had Sean Burke running the defense, which he hasn't done before. So I think a little bit of that. But Carey Price was there. And Carey Price is the reason the Canadiens won. Carey Price is the reason the Canadiens got past the Toronto Maple Leafs. He played well against Winnipeg. His team helped him out a lot, obviously, with the but it was just a lot of things yesterday. And what a bonding moment for this Canadiens team to win a game like that.
Yeah.
The scene on the bench after Josh Anderson scored, and there's Cole Caufield hugging him and patting him on the head, like almost like saying, I told you were going to score. Yeah. It was almost like Cole Caufield being the veteran and Josh Anderson, the kid. So there's just something really special happening with this team. The bond between the young guys and the old guys. Corey Perry taking that stick in the face and then coming back out afterwards, probably while he was still getting stitched up to celebrate with his teammates. So there's something special happening here.
Yeah.
I'm old enough to remember last time the Habs won the Cup in '93, and there's a lot of similarities.
Well, there is. And I'm going to get to that in just a second. But first off here, cheers to you, Stu Cowan. Cherry River Hard Seltzer by Group Geloso. You can find them in all grocery stores. And this one here is a mix of black cherry and cranberry. Only 4% alcohol and only 90 calories. Very, very little sugar in this one. 2 grams only. I love this stuff.
Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers. Okay. Let's get back to a series of events in this hockey game. Number one, the Canadiens go down by a score of 1-0 when Nicolas Roy scores that goal unassisted. Not Eric Stahl's finest moment, where he comes around the net and puts it up in over Carey Price. At that point, the Canadiens are looking for a spark, and they get it when Nick Suzuki sends Caufield off to the races. Stu, this is what everyone's been talking about this kid. He's a goal scorer, and there's a lot of players that would have got that breakaway last night, and the puck is up, and he's trying to settle it down, and somehow they're going to put it in the goalie's pads. Where does he put that one? Up and over Marc-Andre Fleury. I'm telling you, I think that I'm going to get early prediction. Are you ready?
Yep.
Next season, Caufield is the Rookie of the Year in the National Hockey League.
It's a good possibility. I mean, he put that one right where your our buddy Knuckles Nyland says up with the peanut butter, and he made it look so easy. Like that move isn't that easy. He just made it look so simple. And as you said, the pass from Nick Suzuki, and earlier in the period, Nick Suzuki almost got decapitated when he got caught at center ice with that big hit. He got up, picked himself up, and just kept continuing on playing. And it was a couple of years ago. After the Canes had drafted Caufield, and we were in Vancouver with the Canadiens, and Marc Bergevin was just holding an informal scrum with a bunch of guys who were on the road covering the team. And he was asked, about Caufield coming up and what he had thought about it. And he sort of said, in his mind, he had pictured him playing with Suzuki. He figured they'd be a good mix. And now we're seeing it live and in person, what he was sort of thinking about at the time after he drafted him. So there's such a connection there. And with Toffoli, what a perfect mix for a line.
Yeah.
The veteran experience. They see Toffoli spoke about how they get along on the ice, they get along off the ice. Tyler Toffoli in that Players Tribune story talked about how Cole Caufield has that it factor, and he hasn't seen a lot of guys in the NHL who ever had that it factor. And we saw that it factor with that goal. Cole Caufield is just a natural goal scorer. But what's impressed me too, not just his goal scoring ability, his playmaking ability.
Yeah.
His hockey IQ. How hard he bounces.
Fast hands, fast passes, fast shots.
Fast everything. Because, watching him play university hockey on TV, you don't get the full, it's not like watching it live. But, I mean, you look quick, but he's playing against NCAA guys. But he looks quick in the NHL. He's quick. He's got 2 quick steps, and he's gone. And he's really smart. And we've seen it with Dom Ducharme and last night with Luke Richardson. They're not afraid to put him on the ice in any kind of situation. They'll put him on the ice when they're losing by a goal, when they're up by a goal. He's had a lot of ice time. He's a really, really good hockey player. The Canes took, I don't want to say a risk, when he fell to 15th in the draft, the only reason was his size. But, guys that size, they've been small their whole life. They learn how to play it that way. And I think having Brandon Gallagher on the team is going to help Cole Caufield. I'm sure Brandon will be teaching him little tricks about how to win one-on-one battles, how to avoid getting hit really hard and stuff like that. But Cole Caufield, boy, it's hard to believe still that he was a healthy scratch the first 2 games of the playoffs, but man, does he look good. And that goal, he just made it look too easy. That move isn't that easy.
It was amazing, really. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at The Sick Podcast. It is The Sick Podcast. I'm Tony Marinaro. He's Stu Cowan. A shout out to Excellent Photos, centrally located in Montreal, close to downtown shopping and universities. Ships to all of Canada, professional staff at the store and online to help you choose the gear you really need. ExcellentPhoto.ca. That picture of that goal, the goal that puts Vegas up by a score of 2-1 by Alex Pietrangelo, who scores again. He's scored in every game in this series. Stu, the second he scores that goal on a wrist shot that beats Carey Price far side, albeit, but the way Carey Price was playing, I tweeted out, "Oh no, Carey," not because only it was a bad goal, but because I kind of felt really bad for him, right? He had stood on his head and he had made some amazing saves. And that one there, when Price is playing the way he's playing, he should have had. I almost thought at the time, I thought this is going to be it. This is the one that hurts, right? It's one that shouldn't go in. I'm not so sure the Canadiens are going to be able to recover from this. There were 3,500 fans. They weren't overly noisy. Were you in the building last night, Stu?
I wasn't. It's the most quiet I've heard it since they had fans back, especially in that third period. I think fans had given up. I didn't think they thought that, the way the Canes were playing, and as you said, Price has to stop that shot. He'd be the first to tell you that. But I mean, how many amazing saves did he make in that game?
Yeah,
it should have been 4-0 after the first period. But I think it was a bit of a letdown for the fans, and probably on the bench too. The guys like, oh man, and you can't get mad at Carey Price. He's the only reason you're still in the game. But he made a few big saves after that also when it was still 2-1 to keep them in it. And then whatever happened to Marc-Andre Fleury, as I said, the ghosts or whatever, they got that break. And when I went to overtime, I was mentioning earlier how it's starting to feel like 93. We all know 93, they won 10 straight overtimes. And then went into overtime, I was sort of thinking to myself, they're going to win. They're going to win. It's whether it's hockey gods or whatever it is, the momentum is just, you just had a feeling they were going to win.
And Carey Price not going to give up two goals in a row, right? Like you probably thought the feeling, you just thought he was going to redeem himself after giving up that bad goal, and he did. He made a huge stop off Alex Tuck, which was unbelievable. But anyway, the ghosts of the Forum coming back to the Bell Center. You talked about Marc-Andre Fleury. Let's watch it again.
Yeah, it really has. I mean, Vegas is just not giving Montreal much of anything. A fumble, and they score! Fleury gave it away to Josh Anderson, and the game is tied. It makes a difference.
Vegas isn't giving Montreal much of anything, and Marc-Andre Fleury does that. Man, that's one of the worst mistakes I've ever seen him made. And we're talking, we're talking about one of the best clutch goalies of all time here.
Yeah, I don't know what he was trying to do. I mean, I've watched the replay 50 times, and I'm like, what was he doing? Like, he was almost trying to play it between his legs. Like, who was he giving it to? Like, there was so many simple options there. He could have gone either way along the boards. Whatever. Like, that was the only bad thing he could really do. And you wonder, like, what was he thinking? There was nobody forcing him. There was nobody on him. He just had to fire it around the boards, whichever direction. Anderson wasn't on him. Anderson was cutting in front of the net. Yeah. And luckily he did for the Canadians. The puck ended up right there.
I'm happy that it was Anderson that scored it, because up until that point, I have to admit, I'm pretty disappointed with what Josh Anderson had brought to the table for the Canadians these playoffs. We all know how big he is. We all know how strong he is. We all know how dominant he can be. He showed us flashes in the regular season. He didn't in the playoffs. He scored the first goal of that series versus Toronto, hadn't scored since, and then he gets that goal. But Anderson last night was skating, was going to the net, was crashing the net. He was trying to make things happen. And you had a feeling that something good was going to happen with Anderson last night. And it did, not once, but actually twice. And we'll get to the second one in a second here. But I thought Anderson played well last night.
Especially in overtime. Hockey players, they all talk about confidence, right? How important it is, how hard it is to get it. And when you lose it, how hard it is to get it back and keep it. So after he scored the first goal in the overtime, right from the start of the overtime, Anderson was really noticeable. He was flying out there. There was one chip, went in hard on the forecheck, big hit behind the net, turned on the Jets, first guy back on the back check, got the puck. He was flying out there. So I think he got that goal, as much as it was a gift, gave him a confidence boost. I talked earlier about Cole Caufield sort of hugging him on the bench, and it just lit a spark under him. It really did. He really came out in that overtime flying, and he was rewarded for it by getting that goal. And boy, what a pass by Paul Byron. Around the Canadians on a day-to-day basis, or at least before COVID in the room, Paul Byron is one of the nicest guys you will ever meet. Just a down-to-earth, really just a good guy. Just a really
He's a good man.
Guy. The guy you would want to have as your neighbor or your friend, or type of guy it seems you want your daughter to marry type of thing. Just a really good guy.
So if I could take it a step forward, a guy who took it very personally that he was put on waivers 3 times this season, it hurt him. And it affected his pride.
He said all the right things, but I'm sure it did. And he's one of the few. I think him and Drouin are probably the only 2 guys who live in Montreal year round. He has a home on the South Shore. He stays here year round. His kids are involved in sports on the South Shore. He's part of the community here, and he loves it here. And his wife, who's French Canadian, loves it here. And Byron goes out of his way. He does interviews in English and French. He's a proud Canadian. Yeah. As much as he said all the right things and he understood it was a salary cap move, and what in the back of his mind, he's got to be wondering, like, where am I going? My family likes it here. I want to be a Canadian. Luckily for the Canadians now, nobody claimed them. The Canadians said it was only a salary cap move and they were hoping nobody would claim him. But I'm sure in the back of Mark Bergevin's mind, he wouldn't have minded if somebody claimed Byron and they could clear that salary.
Stu, think about this for a second. They say you got to get lucky along the way, right? And obviously they have. And by the way, every team does, all right? So if you're going to call me and tell me that the Canadians are where they are because they're lucky, there's an element of luck for every team and every tournament, every game, every sport. You're not going to tell me that as good as Tom Brady is and as good as the Patriots were, that they never got lucky, okay? Please stop.
Yeah.
Think about what would have been for the Canadians had Paul Byron been claimed off waivers. And he's not there to score that goal that he scores versus Toronto. He's not there to set up Josh Anderson the way he did. He's not there to score that game-winning goal in Game 2 in Vegas. Think about it. If Paul Byron is picked up on waivers, the Canadians are probably eliminated in round 1.
He's a character guy, as I said. And you know, I'm a big guy. I'm like 6'3" and 220 pounds, and I stand beside Byron in the locker room. He's a small, I mean, he's built. He's you know, obviously spends a lot of time in the gym, but he's just a little guy. And he doesn't back down from anyone. He's not afraid to take a hit. He's not afraid to go to the dirty areas. You know, he had that concussion there a couple of years ago when he took on a fight he never should have taken on, given up so much weight. But he's just, as I said, he's a heart and soul guy. And credit to him that he didn't let everything that happened to him this year get him down and didn't affect his play. And when he got back in the lineup, it was more, okay, so I'm going to show you you shouldn't have put me on waivers and why you should keep me here. And no, the speed he has, the way he kills penalties and whatnot, he's been through injury issues, but never said a bad word about the Canadians, never, you know, just a class guy. And as you're right, and you know, would they be where they are now without him? And luck goes into every sport. When the Canadians won 10 overtime games in '93, you don't think that was lucky? You know, when they won the overtime game against Toronto this year, when they were outshot 13-2 in overtime, of course you're lucky. It's lucky bounce here, lucky bounce there. That's part of sports. It's part of every sport.
Of course it is.
And the thing is, you got to take advantage of that luck. And the Canadians did that last night. They got the lucky goal to tie it up. They took advantage of it, and they won in overtime. He's
Stu Count of the Montreal Gazette. I'm Marinaro. It's the Sick Podcast. A shout out to sportbuffshop.com for all of your officially licensed sports apparel and more. Use code SICK15 for 15% off on all of their items. All right. During this video podcast, and you can listen to it on all social media platforms from an audio perspective as well, but I'm wearing a shirt. I want to show it to you. All right. Is this a joke? One of my very famous sayings, I think. Thank you very much. What am I talking about and why am I wearing the shirt? Look at this one incident that happened in overtime, and it happened to Corey Perry.
That's 94 in red. He'll get a stick right there from Marchessault, who just swings.
Marchessault high sticks Corey Perry in the nose. Draws blood everywhere. Corey Perry looks over at the referee and says, "What in the world is going on here?" He has to go back to the locker room. They stitch him out. He comes back by the time they score the goal to celebrate with his teammates and stuff like that. That was obvious as obvious can be, Stu. Now, there's a lot of talk, in Game 2, the Vegas Golden Knights were not called for a single penalty. I thought in Game 3, McNabb should have been called a couple of times for some what I thought were boarding calls or dangerous hits. I mean, opinions vary. What did you make of the way the game was officiated last night? And more importantly, what do you make of the non-call on what was an obvious high stick to Corey Perry in the face?
Well, I tweeted last night during the game, the NHL should be embarrassed by its officiating. It's bad all the time in the playoffs. Last night, it might be the worst officiated game I've ever seen. It was just horrendous. Where I was sitting in the press box last night, I had a perfect view. I was looking right down on Perry when he took the high stick in the face. And the referee, it didn't show really in that video clip, the ref was standing right there, looking right at it. He saw it. He saw him get in the face. Perry got up and showed him the blood, and he didn't call it. Meanwhile,
something has to be done. You cannot have 4 officials on the ice, cameras everywhere, the guy's bleeding, access to all kinds of technology and video technology, and such an important game in the playoffs. And listen, I don't know. I don't want to talk about a fix. I've wired myself not to try and believe in stuff like that. But watching this series, I just can't help but think that if the National Hockey League would rather want if you gave them the choice, Vegas in the final over Montreal with 18,000 strong and it being the city of Vegas. So once again, I don't want to accuse anybody. Really, I don't. But I'm starting to have a bad feeling watching this all unfold.
I don't like going down that road also, but a lot of people are, and it's understandable. When you look at, how do you play a full playoff game and not get a single penalty? Like, nobody hooked anybody or nothing. And the thing that people are talking about is bad for the NHL. The NHL wants to get in bed with legal gambling, and people aren't going to bet on a sport if they start wondering if the officiating, and what happened earlier this season with that NHL ref who got caught on a mic basically saying he made a call that, just sort of an even up type of thing. That's bad. And as bad as the refereeing was last night, if those two referees that were on the ice last night are allowed to referee another game in this playoffs, I'm going to read your shirt there. Is this a joke?
Yeah.
Those two guys should not referee another game in the playoffs. Just that one call on Perry alone. If Corey Perry had accidentally flipped the puck over the glass, he would have got a penalty. Automatic penalty.
It doesn't make sense.
Why isn't high sticking a guy in the face and drawing blood an automatic penalty? 4 minutes. It should be. That's what it says in the rule book. The referee saw it. It was obvious.
This league doesn't make any sense. Anyway, you know what? I think of the adversity the Montreal Canadiens have played through in these playoffs. It's really unbelievable. All the injuries they had down the stretch in the regular season. This is a team that fired their coach, fired their associate coach, fired their goalie coach. We talked about that. The injury to Carey Price, Phil Deneau, Thomas Tatar, Brendan Gallagher, Ben Sherratt, Shea Weber. I'm probably missing a few there down the stretch. Then they get into the playoffs. Their share of injuries in the playoffs as well. And Jake Evans and the concussion list goes on. And Dominic Ducharme tests positive for COVID after being dual vaccinated. I mean, this is incredible. For the second year in a row, the Canadiens are having key playoff games coached by their assistant coaches. Last year, their associate coach. This year, their assistant coach. Can you believe what's going on here?
I don't know if you remember, there used to be a TV series, Lancé Camp.
Yes.
French TV, and it was a draft. It was Réjean Tremblay wrote it.
Yeah.
Hockey soap opera. If Réjean Tremblay wants to bring that series back, he doesn't have to write anything. He can just follow the script of the Canadiens this year from the crazy schedule, as you say, firing the coach, firing the goalie coach in the middle of a game, player testing positive for COVID, coach testing positive for COVID.
Yeah.
The storylines just go on and on and on and on.
So hold on a second. What are you telling me? That Yvon Ponton, who played the role of Jacques Mercier, is going to be the next coach if someone tests positive here? Non! Il y a un chandail que je veux plus voir ici. C'est le numéro 13. Descends-moi ça.
Exactly. And it's, everything. I mean, the Jonathan Drouin, everything that's happened to this team.
Yeah.
And we're talking about Corey Perry. If they lose that game last night, we're all talking about how the Canes got robbed. They should have a power play, and they did get robbed. They should have a power play, but they won. So what would have been a negative thing for the Canes, I think, is now a positive thing. Imagine what it means to a young kid like Cole Caufield. You see Corey Perry; he was obviously in the back getting stitched up. I heard he had 12 stitches, but
wow,
he's back out. Like that's a slap shot scene.
Yeah.
Never lost a cone. Just to see that and the. Corey Perry, what an impact he's had on this team.
I have so much respect for this player, Stu. I don't remember when was the last time I bought a hockey jersey. As you know, ever since we entered the media, we try our very best to be neutral, even though we're working in the city. We're covering the team in the city that we live in and all that stuff. But I have to tell you something. Corey Perry's 36 years old. He may play another season in the National Hockey League. I feel like going out and buying this jersey.
Well, Brendan Gallagher's been the heart and soul of the Canadiens for a long time. And I think right now, Corey Perry is the heart and soul of the team. That's not taking anything away from Brendan Gallagher. Brendan Gallagher is a heart and soul guy. He gives you everything he has every time. But Corey Perry, before Game 5 against the Leafs, he's one of the guys who got up and made a speech to the players saying, don't take this for granted. You never know when or if you're ever going to get back to this situation in your career. Speaking from his own experience, he won a cup with Anaheim when he was only 22. Figured it would happen all the time. Last year, got to the final with Dallas, didn't get it. The only reason Corey Perry is playing this year is to win a Stanley Cup. He's earned $85 or $86 million in his career. He doesn't need the money. He doesn't need to leave his wife and kid back home in London, Ontario. He wants to win. And he grew up as a Canadiens fan. How cool is that? He talked the other day about how proud he is to put that sweater on every time he puts it on.
Amazing.
And he shows it when he goes on the ice. And I was talking earlier about Paul Byron, what a character guy he is. He never complained. Corey Perry signed here, and they said, you're going to start on the taxi squad. He said, okay, wait for my chance.
That's amazing.
And and we talked about luck. I mean, it's a bit of luck that he got a chance, right? Somebody got hurt, he got put in, played a few games, they took him out again, and then they realized we can't take this guy out of the lineup. We just can't. And he has become the heart and soul of the Canadians, and we saw it again.
Yeah.
Just coming out with that bloody face. I mean, that's what a memory that is for those young guys, Suzuki and those guys. 10 years from now, they'll be talking about that moment. You know, listen, remember that time when Corey took the high stick in the face, came back out, celebrated with us? I mean, that's a great moment for those kids, and it just says so much about Corey Perry, how much he wants to win with his team, the character he has, and just the impact he has had on this team, both on and off the ice.
Stu, you were saying before that this is starting to feel like 93. For me, I have never seen anything like this because I really feel that it's almost a hybrid season. It feels like a mix of 86 and 93. The 86 team had 10 rookies, which were a very good blend with all the veterans and a great complement, which I think is what this team has. The 93 team was a team that won 10 consecutive games in overtime, which this team has won every overtime game that they played this far in the playoffs. So it kind of feels like a hybrid, but you're right. You know, like, let's take a look at that game-winning goal by Josh Anderson in overtime.
Out for Riley Smith, defended by Petrie. Kakaniemi, a lead pass knocked down by Anderson. Here's Byron right in. Anderson scores! Josh Anderson wins it in overtime.
Okay, so now, you said the building was very, very quiet, the quietest you've seen it in a long time, but how was that building when he scored that goal? And when he did score that goal, what's the first thing you said to yourself?
When he did score that goal, I thought, what would this be like if there was 20,000 people?
Yeah.
That sort of went through my mind. And the building was loud earlier in the game, but Vegas took the crowd out of the game, similar to how the Canadians took the crowd out of the game in Vegas the previous game. But as I mentioned earlier, this team there is something special. They've talked all along about how the bond they have in the room, and they always say that. They're never going to,
of course,
even if it is. But we're seeing it now. And you go back to 93. Back in 93, my wife was a bartender at Michael D's, which was a restaurant bar in Westmount. It's no longer there. And after the game, a lot of the players would go there for their post-game meal. Michael had a room set up in top where they could be alone. And then a bunch of the guys would come down to the bar afterwards. Our wife was working the bar there, and you could tell, I'd pick her up after work, and the guys would be there, and they were like buddies. They were buddies hanging out after the game. And I think although guys can't go to bars anymore, restaurants with the COVID, but I think these guys are buddies. And I think we saw it with Caufield and Anderson on the bench. We saw it with Corey Perry coming out. I think there's been, Shea Weber, they call him Dad. He's sort of the father of this team.
I've never seen him play better, Stu. I've never seen him play better. And look, they're all playing great. And I have to tell you, though, I've never seen Weber play better. And Phil Deneau, my God, everyone talked about him being an underrated hockey player. I don't think he's underrated anymore. I think he's a top 5 two-way centerman in the National Hockey League on everyone's list.
Well, I finished 6th in the Selke voting, and that might even be low. But Shea Weber, I'm watching the game last night. I was saying to myself, has he ever gone off the ice? Like, it seemed like he was on the ice the whole game. Like, he ended up with 31 minutes, I think, but it looked like he was on the ice the whole game. He's obviously, Petrie is not 100%. And
so you want to know how he's playing? Defensively, he's playing like among the most reliable, steady defensive defensemen in the league. If there was an award for the best defensive defenseman, I'm telling you, and if it was just given in the playoffs, that's how good he's playing.
Well, we're talking about Corey Perry before, telling players, the young guys, don't take this for granted. You never know if he'll be back. Shea Weber's been in the league 16 years. This is the first time he's ever been in the Stanley Cup semifinals. He knows that. He realizes this is probably his last chance to win a Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
And he's going at it. And credit to him, he knows his limitations. He's not the fastest guy out there, but God, he's so good at keeping guys to the outside. He's not laying the huge hits, but he's playing strong against the boards. Edmondson, man, what a big, strong man.
Amazing.
I thought Weber last night might have been his best game as a Canadian. It was also nice to see him come to Suzuki's defense after he took that big hit at center ice. He was mad. Like, that was as angry as I've seen Shea Weber in the playoffs. And he delivered a couple of good cross checks to the back of guys after that. But Weber played fantastic. Philip Deneau, I'm a big Philip Deneau fan. On and off the ice, he's an honest hockey player. And it drives me crazy when people criticize him all the time. Oh, he doesn't score, he doesn't have points. No, but he knows his role. And we're talking about, the Canes don't get this far without Carey Price. They don't get this far without Phil Deneau. He shuts down.
He's amazing at his role. He
knows his role. He takes pride in it.
Yeah.
He drives guys crazy. We saw, Connor McDavid go mad at him. He's so good at what he does. And there's not a lot of guys in the NHL who can do that. I think Canadiens fans, if they didn't appreciate it already, you have to appreciate. You don't judge Philip Deneau by analytics or stats or goals. Just watch him play. I tweeted last night, if you're a defenseman, I played defense when I was a kid, and Philip Deneau's on your team, he's your best friend. Every time you cough up the puck or you lose the puck in your own corner, he's there. Yeah. Every time you come around and you don't know what to do with the puck, he's there. He's open. He's such a good, smart, 200-foot hockey player.
Yeah.
And, the Canadiens are going to have to pay him to keep him, because if they don't, somebody else is going to offer him money. And I think I mentioned this the last time I was on your show. I think he's upset that news leaked about him turning down the contract in the offseason. It shouldn't have leaked. Deneau's a class guy. He didn't deserve for that to get leaked out wherever it came from. You have to think it came from someone within the Canadiens. But if the Canadiens don't want to re-sign him, there's a lot of other teams out there that would love to have Philip Deneau. And man, if I'm his agent and I'm watching him play in these playoffs, I'm smiling, because he's putting on a pretty good performance.
I think I'm going to have to pay you to keep you too, but in the meantime, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to pay it forward with some Cherry Rivers. So send me your address, and I'm going to send you a case. This is the drink of the summer, my friend, the Cherry River Hard Seltzer, and it comes with in different flavors, of course. This one here that I'm sipping on is the black cherry and the cranberry. Stu Cowan of the Montreal Gazette, thanks for joining us on the Sick Podcast, my man.
My pleasure, Tony. Anytime. Have a good day.
All right, talk to you soon. It's now time to make a little money.
Money, 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 money.
It's time for Sick Picks, brought to you by MyBookie.
His name is Cash, and his handle is I Run My Bets, and there you have it. Hold on a second. Is that new cash, or is that the same 10 G's from the other night?
No, this is new cash, guys. This is cash from yesterday's plays that I gave out to everybody.
Whoa, okay. What are your plays?
Okay, guys, first of all, I gave out Montreal in the series future 2 days ago. I told you guys I think they have a good chance to win the series, plus 300, some serious value. I don't just tell you guys this blindly. I back it up with my own money. What did I do? I bet Montreal to win yesterday, plus 140, easy cash. What did I do? I gave out on the show. I gave out Philly money line. I told you guys, they're an Atlanta hostile environment. They're down 3-2, but they're the better team. What do? They come out and smack Atlanta up. They go up, series tied 3-3 now. I have another pick for you guys for Game 7. Game 7's tomorrow, Sunday, guys. Massive game. Hawks, Philly. Give me Philly, -7. Yes, I'm going to be laying 7 points. It's a lot. They're back at Philly. They're not going to blow another lead. I expect a 10-plus point blowout. Guys, we've been doing some ridiculous stuff. Clean sweep on my premium slate yesterday. Clippers +2 cash. Phillies cash. Massive parlay. Canadians, Dodgers. That's money, guys. I'm killing it right now. I need everybody to hop on. Shoot me a DM. Get involved. Find me on Telegram, guys. Shoot me a message. I'm making everybody cash right now, guys.
Everybody's making cash. Even I'm making cash.
There we go. That's what I'm talking about.
Hold on a second. I'm making cash too. All right. Okay. Not as much as him, though. That's why he's the expert. He has Run My Bets. Thank you, Cash.